Welcome to Sermon Craziness Against the Lord. So let's talk about a little bit about the history of the people of Israel, of the Israelites. So Israel at some point was taken out of Egypt. God brought them out and brought them to the promised land. And then they were asking for another king. Like they were asking for a king. And they said, we want to have a king like the other nations have. And God was like, I am your king. But they were like, no, we want to have a king like the other nations have. And then they got Saul, and then they got David, and then they got Solomon. And after Solomon, like the things just started blowing out crazy. And then they split, and they were no longer the whole nation of Israel, but now they're the people of Israel in the north, and then the people of Judah in the south. Okay? The people of Israel in the north, eventually the capital is going to be Samaria. And in the south, eventually the capital is going to be Jerusalem, okay? Some of the kings did good, some of the kings did evil. But most of all, the people of Israel were just doing bad. They were just going and doing evil and evil over evil. And during all that, God was sending prophets and messengers to the community and to the people, telling them what you're doing is not good, what you're doing is not what you're supposed to do. Please do things in a different way. Please do things in a different way. Please do things in a different way. And boom, And one of the prophets, it's Micah, okay? So in the next Sundays, except the 2 Sundays that I'm not going to be here because of Tommy, we're going to be in the book of Micah, okay? There's a lot of information in the book of Micah. And why I thought about the book of Micah, I think the book of Micah, it's going to give us a lot of reflections on God and the love of God for his people. And also, it's going to help us to learn how to love him and also how to love community. And we're going to have some lessons from community, to live in community, and what are the things that we're supposed to do in community as a nation, as people of God. So the idea is that we can learn about love God, love people, and make disciples in the book of Micah. Micah chapter 1, verse 1 says, "The word of the Lord came to Micah of Moresheth during the reigns of Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah, the vision he saw concerning Samaria and Jerusalem." So this verse 1 is giving us the historical context where Micah is in. So it's giving us the kings where that were running Jerusalem while he was alive, okay, while he was getting the prophecies from God. Also, the verse 1 is telling us that he's located in Jerusalem because it's only mentioning the kings in Jerusalem. But I want to see with just verse 1, and I want to go and see the kings and what was going on during those reigns and during those kings. So we're going to read a lot. Can we read today? Yeah? Yes. Okay. But it's not just going to be like last week, the sermon was 3 verses. This is going to be a lot of verses. Can we read today? Yeah? But it's not just any read. It's going to be read on the Old Testament, a bunch of names that I don't know how to pronounce. Can we read today? Yeah? All right. Cynthia says no. She doesn't have an option. Well, thank you, Cynthia. Okay. So the first king that is mentioned here is Jotham. Okay? So to know about Jotham, we're going to 2 Chronicles, chapter 27, verse 1 and 2. And it says, Jotham was 25 years old when he became king. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. The people, however, continue their corrupt practices. So then you can see that some of the kings were doing good, but just the fact that the king was doing good didn't mean that the people were doing good. Sometimes the king was doing good and people were doing bad, sometimes the opposite, and sometimes they were all doing bad things and joining evil over evil. Okay? Ahaz, that's the second king mentioned. 2 Chronicles, chapter 28, verse 1, and then verses 21 through 25. And it says, Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he reigned in Jerusalem 16 years. Unlike David, his father, he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord. And then verse 21. Ahaz took some of the things from the temple of the Lord and from the royal palace and from the officials and presented them to the king of Assyria. But that did not help him. In his time of trouble, King Ahaz became even more unfaithful to the Lord. Verse 23. He offered sacrifices to the gods of Damascus, who had defeated him. For he thought, since the gods of the kings of Aram have helped them, I will sacrifice them so they will help me. No, not good. But they were his downfall, and the downfall of all Israel. Verse 24. Ahaz gathered together the furnishings from the temple of God and cut them into pieces. He shuts the doors of the Lord's temple and set up altars at every street corner in Jerusalem. 25. In every town in Judah, he built high places to burn sacrifices to other gods and aroused the anger of the Lord, the God of his ancestors. Just evil over evil, just craziness over craziness. He was taking things from the temple that at some point David and Solomon were like putting together, and they were put it in the temple of the Lord. And now he's taking all those things from the temple to give it to other kings, you know? And we said that at some point they didn't have a king. The king was God. And they were like, no, we want a king like the other nations. Now the king that they chose, now the decision, because of their decision, now that king is taking all the things from the temple and giving it to another king because they are in trouble right now. They're just going crazy. And I was thinking at this point, like just a personal reflection, how like sometimes it happens, you know? Sometimes we put things, good things in our hearts. Like not right now we're the temple of God, okay? So we put gold, we put things that we value, you know? We put precious things in our temple to offer it to God. And I wonder sometimes we take those things just to give it to someone else, just to give it to another king, just to give it to someone else, because we think that's going to solve our problems. We think that's going to make us good. That's going to help us, you know? Like then we get in trouble and we start taking all those things like this king was doing, you know? Verse 23 says, since the gods of the other nations, since the gods of the kings of Aram have helped in them, I will sacrifice to them so they will help me. And I was thinking sometimes we have our convictions, our beliefs, but because we don't see and we start like looking around, well, if that person is doing that and it's working, then I might as well do it. And if that person has been doing this kind of life, and it's successful or whatever in our perspective, then I'm going to do the same, you know? If this other group of people are doing this and they are doing good, then I'm going to start doing it, you know? Since the gods of the kings of Aram have helped them, I will sacrifice to them, you know? I wonder how often do we get into that situation where we just see the other people, we see that they are just doing great, and we're like, okay, so I guess I'm going to do the same, you know? I'm going to do the same things. I know that may not be right. I know that's not right. I know that's what God doesn't want from me. But if they're doing it, it's working for them, I might as well do it, you know? In verse 24, he says, he shuts the door of the Lord's temple and set up altars at every street corner in Jerusalem. So the place that once was the place for going, encountering God, offer sacrifices to him, be in the presence of the Lord, now he's closing the doors of the temple. Like he's kind of like saying, I don't need you, Lord. Like I don't need you anymore. And now he's starting like building altars and worshiping other idols. And again, I wonder, when do we get to those places and we shut the door of the Lord? You know? And we don't want to listen to them anymore. We don't want to have to deal with them anymore. And because we're just comparing and seeing and just doing evil over evil, we just get to the point where we start putting altars and putting other gods in our lives. You know, we start worshiping other people. We start worshiping these communities. We start worshiping these things that I think they're going to help me, that they're going to benefit me. And we shut the door of the temple of God. We don't want to listen from him anymore. And then we start doing things. We start just doing evil over evil. Third, the other king, 2 Kings chapter 18, verse 2, and then 5 through 7. He was 25 years old when he became king. He reigned in Jerusalem 29 years. Hezekiah, verse 5, Hezekiah trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. He held fast to the Lord and did not stop following him. He kept the commands of the Lord had given Moses, and the Lord was with him. He was successful in whatever he undertook. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him. So the consequence right now that we see of rebelling against the king of Assyria and actually following the commands of the Lord is that it says the Lord was with him, and he undertook. Like in comparison with the other two that they were just doing crazy and they were just going bad and bad and bad, this king was different as the other ones. He was faithful to the Lord. He didn't please the other people. He didn't please the other king. He was not doing like worshiping other gods. He was pleasing God. He was trying to find. In the midst of that, he inherited evil. He inherited bad things. He probably grew up in the context of the other kings, right? He was 20-something at that point, and the other king reigned for 20-something years. So he grew up worshiping other idols. The doors of the temple were closed. Even in the midst of all that, he chose to follow God and his commands that Moses has given to them. And what happened after that? The Lord was with him, and he was successful in whatever he undertook. So sometimes we blame the context, Oh, it's because I was raised this way. It's because the people that I had been around me. It's because of this and because of that. He was raised in that context. But he chose, in the middle of all that, to follow God, to look at him. He had power. He had everything. He was the king. Yet he chose to follow God. And we can see from the history that he was successful in everything he undertook. So we can reflect in the history. We can see some of the similarities that we're facing right now as individuals and as a community, and we can make decisions based on that. That's the idea from this sermon, okay? Now let's see. These were the three kings of Jerusalem that were mentioned in verse 1. There were other kings in Israel at the same time that Micah is prophesying. So let's see what were the kings of Israel doing while Micah was preaching and talking to them, prophesying to them. The first king is Pekah. Pekah, we can find about him in 2 Kings chapter 15, 27 through 30. Are we okay? Still good? Yeah? A lot of reading? Not the best Sunday for reading? Are we good? Okay. Chapter 15, verse 27. In the 52nd year of Azariah, king of Judah, Pekah, son of Remaliah, became king of Israel in Samaria. And he reigned 20 years. Verse 28. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit. Verse 29. In the time of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and took Ijon, Abel-Beth-Maachah, Janoah, Kadesh, and Hazor. He took Gilead, Galilee, including all the land of Naphtali, and deported all the people to Assyria. Then Hoshea, son of Elah, conspired against Pekah, son of Remaliah. He attacked and assassinated him, and then succeeded him as king in the 20th year of Jotham, son of Uzziah. That's why I didn't preach about this last year. Like, my pronunciation will have messed the whole thing. I know it's happening right now. I told Princess, it doesn't matter my pronunciation, If I was talking about presidents of the United States, I would have to be careful, but bear with me, okay? What's the point about all these names and about all these cities? We don't know the names of the city. We don't know. We haven't been there probably, okay? But the point is, he did evil in the sight of the Lord, okay? He did evil. He wasn't doing good. And what happens is that now the king of Assyria is coming to conquer the cities that God has given to them. Like God said, I'm going to take you out of Egypt. I'm going to take you to the promised land, and this is going to be for you. Well, right now, because they're doing evil over evil, now the other king is coming and attacking the cities and getting closer to Jerusalem. That's what happened. Getting closer to Samaria. They are just getting closer to the capital. And they are taking all these cities that at some point belonged to them. That at some point they were free to enjoy and to live in. Didn't have to pay for that. It was just given by God. And at that point, they are just being taken away from them, something that at some point belonged to them. But now it's taken away because they are doing evil. And the king of Assyria was like next to them. And now the king of Assyria is like coming. And now he's not just taking the cities. Now he's taking the people and sending the people to Assyria, which is that right now he's taking the people from the promised land to another land. Another land that they don't worship the Lord. That they worship other gods. So they have craziness over there. And what you can see is the consequence of, the verses start saying, he did evil in the sight of the Lord. It's just evil over evil, and now they're losing things that at some point belonged to them, and now they're being taken and deported to other nations. And then verse 30 says, Then Hoshea, son of Elah, conspired against Pekah, son of Remaliah. He attacked and assassinated him, and then succeeded him as a king. So the next king is king because he assassinated the king previous to that. It's just evil over evil. It's when you're paying evil with evil, thinking that something good is going to happen after that. And it's just craziness over craziness and bad things over bad things. And maybe you can see that going on right now in our countries, in our communities, in our personal lives. Maybe some of that is happening. But that's what happened when we read the story and history. We can see what happened back then. We don't have to guess. The verse is telling that what happened, what they were doing before, what they were doing in the meantime, and the consequences of that. Right now we're doing things and we're like, well, maybe it's going to work out. But we don't know. But if we look at the history, we know what happened. And if we don't know that, we can just get back into that and just repeat the same story, and go back to similar circumstances and situations. The other king, Hoshea, 2 Kings 17. Where am I? Here. Verse 1. Verse 1 and 2. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hoshea, son of Elah, became king of Israel in Samaria. And he reigned 9 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, but not like the kings of Israel who preceded him. Verse 3. Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up to attack Hoshea, who had been Shalmaneser's vassal and had paid him tribute. Verse 4. But the king of Assyria discovered that Hoshea was a traitor, for he had sent envoys to So, king of Egypt. And he no longer paid tribute to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore, Shalmaneser seized him and put him in prison. Verse 5, the king of Assyria invaded the entire land, marched against Samaria, and laid siege to it for 3 years. In the ninth year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria and deported the Israelites to Assyria. He settled them in Helad, in Gozan, on the Habor River, and in the towns of Medes. So what's going on right now? So Hoshea has been doing evil over evil. He was having business with the king of Assyria, but now he's also doing business with the king of Egypt. And the king of Assyria is like, so now I can see that you're doing this, so now I'm going to go. He conquered him, he seized him, he put him in prison. Now the king of Israel is now in prison by the hands of the... It's like, hey, I'm not preaching about this because of what's going on, but it's just interesting to see a history. And now he's taken into another country, and it's now in prison. The one that was free, that has power, that has a lot of things to do, that was free to do a bunch of stuff, right now he's in prison because he is doing business and he's trading. He has betrayed the Lord, and now he's betraying just people and other kings and everybody, and everything just going crazy. When that happens, the king of Assyria is like, okay, so if you've been doing that, now I'm going to capture you, and now I'm going to invade your cities. And then in the other verses, we have seen that he had been coming to like other cities. Now he's not coming to any city. He's coming to the capital. And he captured the whole Samaria. So Samaria is the place, like the capital of the people of the north. So it's like he just got to the power, to where the power remains, and he's conquering that. Once it was them, and now it's no longer them. It's no longer theirs. Because in serving the Lord, they start serving other people. He's serving other kings. And that's where we got right now, So how much, I wonder right now, how much can we lose trying to obey others but the Lord? You know, how much can we lose? Something that at some point was given to us, something that we inherited from the Lord, something that probably we didn't deserve, but we received from the Lord. But because just we're just doing evil over evil. How much can we lose trying to obey other people, trying to please other people, trying to have business with other people, trying to obey and do the commands of other people instead of looking at the Lord? How much can we lose to the point that we are like, you know what, I need to do something. Like I need to do something different. Verse 7, the first part of verse 7 says, all this took place because the Israelites had sinned against their God. And this verse is important because it's telling us why all this is happening. And all this is happening, and it's actually like what it says. All this took place because the Israelites had sinned against the Lord. So it's not like God just one day woke up and he was like, you know what, I don't care about these people. You know, let whatever happen to them. It's not that one day the king woke up and he was like, I'm going to do this little bad right now. It's not that one day the people of Israel were like, oh, we did just something bad today and now this is happening. They had been sinning against the Lord. They had been doing that for a long time, that now all this is taking place because of what they have done. It's not God's fault. God didn't want that for them. God wanted them to be free. God chose that place for them to live in. God told them, this is what you need to do in order to be in covenant with me. This is what you need to do. This is what things that you need to follow. And you're going to be prospered. And you're going to be blessed. Okay? But they were like, no, we want this, and we want that, and we want this, and we want that, and we want to follow this. We want to be like them. We want to be like them. And all this is taking place because they had sinned against the Lord. Verse 7 continue, says, because they have sinned against the Lord, who had brought them up out of Egypt, from under the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. They worship other gods and follow the practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before them, as well as the practices that the kings of Israel had introduced. Verse 9, the Israelites secretly did things against the Lord, their God, that were not right. From watchtower to fortified city, they built themselves high places in all their towns. They set up sacred stones and Asherah poles on every high hill and under every spreading tree. Verse 11, at every high place they burned incense, as the nations whom the Lord had driven out before them had done. They did wicked things that aroused the Lord's anger. They did things against the Lord secretly and publicly. And that's interesting, you know. That's interesting. We're going to see a little bit of that in the next sermon. But it's interesting that it says they did things secretly and publicly. And both are taking place right now. Both things. And like sometimes we do things that are publicly bad, you know. And the people that are doing public things, like bad things, they are like normally. But sometimes there are some secrets that we're keeping, some things that we're doing in secret, that probably at some point they're going to like have consequences of the things that is happening. And they did what the other nations were doing. That's what the verse says. And that's where we're at right now. Like they're being captured, the cities are being conquered, all that because they are trying to do the things that the other nations are doing. The nations God took and God said, don't follow what they're doing. Now they're doing against that. Now they're doing what the Lord asked them not to do. Verse 11 says, they did wicked things that aroused the Lord's anger. And I wonder, how much do we need to do in order to arouse the Lord's anger? In order to provoke the Lord's anger? Because again, it wasn't like a one moment. It wasn't like right away, you know. It's like I was thinking about like with Ellie. It's not that she does something and you're like, ah! Unless you have something. It's like, Ellie, don't do that. Ellie, don't do that. Ellie, don't do that. Ellie, please don't do it. Please, and then you get to the point where I told you not to do that. Right? It's not like you just out of like nothing, you know. How much needs to happen How much do we need to do for the Lord's anger to come like, you know what? Let me do something. I have been telling you. I have been asking you. I have been pleasing you. I have been sending you people. I've been giving you this. I've been showing you miracles. I've been doing this in your life. How much do we need to do? And how much needs to happen? How much wicked things needs to happen in this community, in this world, for the Lord's anger to say, like, I'm done with, like, you guys are going crazy. Like, what else do you want from me? You know, how much needs to happen in our lives, in the world, for us to, like, to get the Lord's anger, like, to happen in our lives. Verse 12 through 15. They worship idols, though the Lord had said, you shall not do this. The Lord warned Israel and Judah through all his prophets and seers. Turn from your evil ways. Observe my commands and decrees in accordance with the entire law that I commanded your ancestors to obey and that I delivered to you through my servants the prophets. Verse 14. But they would not listen and were as stiff-necked as their ancestors, who did not trust in the Lord their God. Verse 15. They rejected his decrees and the covenant he had made with their ancestors and the statutes he had warned them to keep. They followed worthless idols and themselves became worthless. They imitated the nations around them, although the Lord had ordered them, do not do as they do. They broke their covenant with God. God said, you need to do this. And they were like, we don't care. Like their actions were saying that. They broke the covenant with God. They didn't care about the God that was protecting them, that was taken out of slavery, that took them to darkness into a wonderful place. They didn't care about that. They broke the covenant. And because they were worshiping other idols. And I wonder how many idols are interfering between us and God right now, like as individuals. And how many idols, how many things are we worshiping that we're putting above the Lord? How many things do we have that we're like, those are the things, you know? And sometimes there are some religious things that we put above the Lord. You know, this is more important than the Lord. And we need to follow this. And sometimes it's just nothing related to religion. But I wonder how many idols are interfering between me and God? How many idols are interfering between us as a community and God? Like as in the valley, as a community. What are the things that we're putting first that may not be the Lord? What are the things that as a nation we're putting first instead of the Lord? What are the things that are as continent we're putting first instead of the Lord? What are the things that we're putting first? What are the idols that we have that we believe they're going to do better than the Lord? But they're probably going to go better because other people are doing things and they're doing great. Why are we following the Lord? We should be doing that. That looks like a better outcome, you know. It looks like better things are coming out of that situation instead of being here worshiping the Lord and following his commands. They follow worthless idols and themselves became worthless. That's interesting. Like probably the things that you follow, at some point you're going to become like that thing. You know, the people that you follow, at some point maybe you're going to start imitating the things that they have and the value that probably they have. You know, they started following other idols that were worthless and they became worthless themselves. Trying to find maybe hope, trying to find maybe something good out of the situation, and they find themselves like worthless because they were trying to follow something that the Lord wasn't asking them to follow. They were not trusting in the Lord enough that they were just doing crazy over craziness. How much are we imitating other peoples and other nations instead of following and imitating the Lord? How much do we value the new covenant of Jesus, the new covenant of love that we are in right now? How much are we taking care of that covenant instead of breaking the covenant and not taking care of that? You know? And that, my friends, is the context where Micah is going to be talking about. It's easy moment to talk, easy moment to be a prophet, when all those things are taking place, when everybody's just going crazy, The kings are doing whatever they want. Idols over here, idols over there. The cities are being captured. The king is taken. The people are just being sent back to Syria. And this is where Micah is like, going to preach and going to talk and going to ask the community and going to say some things to the community. And that's what we're going to see in future verses and in future Sundays, except the Sundays, but Tommy comes. Some things that we can relate right now. Some things may not be like, I don't see that in my life. I don't see that in the world right now. But you can see that some of the things is like, is Danny preaching because this is happening? No, not necessarily. But it's like we're just repeating history. Just do things and say some things, some other things, and we just repeat history. We're not necessarily like, doing 100% like that. But it's like some of the things that we do in our personal lives, some of the things that we do as a community, is just repeating what other people have done before. And we're thinking that this is going to be better, that this is going to get us a different result. If I just do it right now, then it's going to get better. And the history is telling us, no, it's not going to work out. Trust in the Lord. Trust in his covenant. Craziness against the Lord. It's what's happening in here. Craziness and craziness and craziness. So let's explore what the Lord has to say through the book of Micah in the middle of all that and learn about God. Learn how to love God, how to love people, and how to make disciples. God bless you.